I just wanted to give you some very quick background on me, because a lot of you don't actually know anything about me. I had my first piano lesson when I was 4. I did piano lessons for 8 years and didn't get past initial. Took 40 years to figure out I had ADD. There you go. I started singing in the church choir when I was 8. Guitar lessons when I was 9. Started playing bass when I was 14. And I first started helping with sound at church when I was 12.
Wow.
At 15 I joined a band at church, which led me to a job at a New Zealand audio manufacturer. By the time I was 16, I was running the hire department, designing the solution and events for bands and things like that. And at 16 I was doing sound in pubs for clients, as well as playing in venues as well. I have performed over 100 shows with 7 bands, 1,000 worship services, led worship for 100 services, including leading worship for a Mexican church in Texas.
In Mexican?
Yep, some of the lyrics were. It was quite hilarious. I've done sound for at least 100 shows, worked with at least 50 bands, done sound for at least 500 church services, 300 different band configurations, and been involved in around 200 corporate events. I have designed close to 500 sound and AV solutions and installed and commissioned 50 of these systems, and helped generate over $20 million worth of sales in the audio industry in a career spanning 28 years. So, if anyone was doing the maths on that, I have done about 3,000 different shows, being on them, in them, running them, playing them, doing them. And if each of them is 3 hours, I've had about 9,000 hours. It takes 10,000 hours to be an expert, so I'm nearly there. So I've got a little bit of experience. I don't know everything. The biggest PA I've mixed on is about 40,000 watts. 48 channel consoles that start here and end here, with go that deep, with about 1,000 different knobs and dials on them. And I know what they all do. So that's me. And this isn't going to work, because it's not going to reach. Who wants to be the clicker boy? Or girl?
Jesse just took off.
Next slide, Jesse. It's on the laptop over there. Push the down button, maybe. Yes. Why are we here? What is our purpose of doing sound?
To make everything audible. Yeah, it'll be audible anyway. It's not very loud.
But why are we here?
To worship God.
And
Jesus, I thought that was a pretty good answer.
yeah, we're here to get the guy sitting up here talking about God, to make it so that people down the back can hear. That's our primary purpose, is to help create a platform of worship so that people can be free of distraction, and be able to let go of what is around them, so that they can focus on worship to God, so they can let go of stuff, and so that they're in a position to be able to hear what's being said to them, without it ripping their ears off, or without having to strain to hear. And of course, when you've got 200 people in a room, or 1,000 people in a room, that's a big balance to get it between being able to hear it and it not being too loud. Why do we need a sound person?
I'm sound person.
Possibly. So when you've got one microphone, you can set the volume, and within reason it looks after itself. Until you get somebody that's this short and the microphone's up there, and then you need to figure something out. So you need somebody to be able to make adjustments to the microphone. And then as you get more and more microphones, it gets more and more complex. So then the skill level required to achieve the desired sound has to come up with it. So when you've got two microphones, within reason, anyone can sit there and go, oh, that needs to go up, that needs to go down. What would you say are some key attributes of somebody that needs to do sound? Go.
He's reading the notes.
Awesome. Thanks, Jesse. That's amazing. Skilled and critical listening. And a servant heart. So, one of the things that I think is the most important for a sound person in a church setting is a servant heart.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at doing sound as a job and turn up at 8:30, 8:45, 9 o'clock, that's a bit of a questionable question as to your servant heart. But if you don't turn up when you're supposed to, you're letting other people down. And when it comes to having a servant heart, your job is to serve others. So my job as a sound guy is not to be arrogant and say, turn your bass down because it's too loud. My job is to say, I'm not able to achieve a good sound for your bass out of front of house, so could you please turn it down? Now with the first one, you're going to just go, whatever. The second one, you're going to go, maybe I'll get him to prove it. But then, so our job here is to be a servant. Now, that's not just being on sound, that's doing anything. Obviously, if you're on sound, that's your primary focus, but that's a good start. Go Juicy next. What's the difference between an audio engineer and a church sound volunteer? I rebuke that.
One of them gets paid.
No.
Wait, you get paid?
Usually skill level, isn't it?
Yeah. So in my terminology, let's not look at the official terminology of a sound engineer or an A1 engineer who is the primary technical manager, mixer person. I am. So when it comes to doing sound in church, there are two main types of sound people. One that completely knows what he or she is doing and can fix and achieve anything on the stage, back of stage, faults in the speakers, wiring, setting it up, packing it down, moving it, every single little thing involved with sound. And a basic sound engineer, sound person in church may be able to get the faders so that they're nice balanced, get a really nice mix. So it's not about belittling the capability of the church sound person, but it's just showing a little differentiation. So I'm not expecting you've got people that are wanting to learn more about sound to jump into the sound engineer field immediately or even have a desire to be a sound engineer. What I would like to do is to be able to equip you to get it sounding good. And when someone says, I need this in my fallback, you know how to do it. And then the next level up from being able to do that is something's crackling and you're thinking, what is that crackle? And recognising the crackle, which you get from doing 1,000 shows and lots of experience, or hanging out with somebody that's done that. So what I would encourage you, people that are wanting to learn, is be inquisitive. So if you notice a crackle, and you're just in the congregation, ask the sound person afterwards, what was that crackle? Like when the DI does its funny beeping sound. Most people wouldn't know it's the DI, but we know it's the DI now because we recognise the sound. Give it a kick and it's fixed. That's known as a technical tap. So my first aim today is to give you an opportunity to learn a bit more about what our desk is and our church sound system, and then we'll take it a bit more advanced for those that want to be a bit more advanced, and if you don't want to be a bit more advanced and want to run away, you're allowed to, because we're not doing this today with a live band. We're doing it with a pre-recorded live band, which happens to be from people in this room. What are my key tasks? I'm going to read them out because I had to think. So, my job is to make sure that each input works. The batteries are charged, the system is turned on and working, the microphones are in the correct position, DIs are plugged in and working. I set the monitor mixes, except for those that have got the app, but we'll talk about that later. Front of house mix, unmuting all the channels that are being used, muting the channels that aren't being used, and actively listening for changes and making appropriate changes to that. So if somebody gets to a part in the song that they know really, really well, and then they start singing really loud compared to how they were, because they used to sing like this, so they're coming through a little bit, and then here's the chorus, they really know it, and so they're singing really loud. Sound guy needs to turn it down. And that's the big challenge in India, is actively listening. So that's something that we talked about over there. Because I spent 2 hours with them in a session like this, and then also did some session training on the Sunday and the Friday. So once you've got everything set, after practice, your job's not finished. We start again, we start the service, and you need to be actively mixing for every song. You need to be looking around at each person and figuring out if they're coming through. And if the guitar patch changes and it's louder, then you need to turn it down. If it's quieter, you need to turn it up. If it's something that you need to push, you've got different things you've got to adjust. So actively listening and mixing is very important. What do I do when something doesn't work?
Call you. Pray.
Run.
Yes.
Yes.
So there's lots of different things that go wrong. So at the moment, the multimedia computer sound card has given up on life. And yes, it needs to receive its healing. But when something's not working, you've got to look at the different pathways. Now, I'm just going to quickly go over it as an example. I can't get into all the fault-finding things. But basically, when did it last work? So if it worked at Thursday practice and now it's not working on Sunday, what's changed? Somebody's bought their guitar and they used a different guitar last time. So maybe the guitar they bought this time, the battery's dead. Have you checked the battery? Yes, it's working. Okay, cool. Check the cable. So you basically got to go through the whole line from the source of the sound, through all the cables, to the desk, and then through the desk to front of house. So using the acoustic as an example, things that go wrong with the acoustic is the batteries die, or the lead. And then from the lead it goes into a DI box, and then that goes into a mic lead into the desk, and quite often the DI box needs phantom power, and I should have lost a bunch of you already. Then it goes to the snake, and from the snake it goes underneath, running alongside the power cables so that it helps with the induced sound of when it rains. And that goes to the back, it goes to the desk. Then from the desk you've got the input, through the gain, through the routing, through the volume control, to a subgroup, from the subgroup to front of house, from front of house to the crossover section, which has its own volume controls and mutes, to amplifiers out the back, to speaker cables, to the subs and the tops. Which bit's not working? So, where do you start? So that's a very small example of the thought process for one thing, and there's 100 things that can go wrong and 1,000 different solutions to all of them. So we can talk about that later. Go, Jesse. Oh, how do I get a good mix? Has anyone heard of the sound pyramid? The sound pyramid.
I've heard of it like a house.
Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of different ways of portraying this. And this isn't necessarily correct, it's just one that I grabbed because pretty sure we don't have saxophone or viola, but they should be down the bottom. So this is kind of, think of this as the volume level as opposed to the amount of stuff that's there, or how it sits in the mix, which again comes down to critical listening and how you actually hear things. So starting at the top, we have the lead vocals. That should be the most dominant. Now, depending on how you mix, so this is in a church worship setting. In a rock setting, it's different. It's going to be a lot flatter. So you've got the lead vocals that are louder than everything else. Then sitting underneath that, you've got the kick, snare, and acoustic. So kick and snare is your main rhythm, and the acoustic is one of the dominant instruments. Now, the reason it needs to be quite loud is it actually gets drowned out really easily. I would put the piano up there as well. I've got you, man. Because that too is very, very leady. That's what people are following. Then you've got the supporting instruments, the electric guitar and bass, and the backing vocals. And then underneath that, you've got the cymbals and stuff you don't need, and the toms. Toms I think everything I'll just turn upside down and just crank everything. But that's to give you an idea of roughly where things need to sit in the mix as far as who's the loudest, who's the quietest. Now you notice there isn't a separate box called the quiet corner that has bad singers, bad players, other things. Everybody's in the mix. It's just a matter of putting them in the right place. Next. How loud should it be? What have I told you before about how loud it should be? Not you. So the answer. Okay, go Alex.
I would say so the person in the back of the room has a chance of hearing what's actually going on stage.
But it's not too loud.
Okay, so we've got two different planes, vortexes, axes, evils. So your first one is from a singing perspective. When you're singing, you want to hear the person next to you. You don't want to hear the person 6 people away. Now, with some people, it's a challenge to not hear them, but that's okay. Some people are loud. Yes. But if you can hear the person next to you, well, if you can hear the person 5 people away, that means they can hear you. So you're going to sing quieter because you don't want everyone hearing you, necessarily. If you can't hear the person next to you, then you're going to go, no one can hear me, so what's the point in singing? So there's a balance between having it where you can have some good congregational singing, because that's what we're here for. It's not a rock concert. Sorry, I just threw up saying those words. But you don't want it so loud that it's offending people or scaring people off. And then obviously you've got your morning volume and your evening volume, because younger people like it loud and older people don't. But being able to feel it in your chest is very good, but you need about 8 of them aside, not 1. So it also comes down to what the system can do. Next. How do you think you get it to make it sound a bit fuller? What sort of instruments would you push?
Crank the bass.
And
Just that.
so if you've got just the bass, is that going to inspire you to jump around? Yes, you see.
Depends if please play.
Percussion. Yes. So your rhythm type things are what you push, and it's not necessarily all of it. You don't push up all the drum kit, but you might push up the kick drum and the floor tom, or the toms, depending on the song, of course. Having bottom end in the mix. Depending on your system, depends on how you achieve it. So in Auckland, they've got a 20,000 watt, 30,000 watt sound system that can easily handle the AATS centre at half volume. So they've got plenty of headroom. So their style of mixing, from what I understand, is they tend to cut, not boost. So if they want more bass or bottom end in the channel, they'll cut the upper frequencies as opposed to boosting the bass. Whereas here, we have limited bottom end capabilities, so we have to push the bass here. So we'll see later that all the channels, a lot of the channels, I'm pushing up the bass. And that's, to a certain extent, there's not really a right or wrong way of doing it, depending on how much you're pushing it. Right, some tricks on getting everything heard. If I'm playing guitar and it's not coming out front of house, what's the point in me playing? If you're singing and you're backing and you're not coming through front of house, what's the point in you singing? So as a sound guy, if I'm not putting people into the mix so that they're heard, I'm dishonouring the people on stage. So it's really important to have it so that everyone can be heard. Of course, there is then the balance of getting it so that it's a good mix of the different sounds. Because when you've got 3 female vocals that all have the same vocal range, and you have an acoustic guitar, and you have a keyboard playing higher up the keys, they all sit into the same frequency range, so they're all fighting for the same space. And so then you've got to get into different ways of mixing, so whether that's panning, making the microphone sound different, so you might make one person sound bassier than the other. You might cut certain frequencies from one person or another, so that frees up that frequency space for something else. And that way you're not all fighting for the same thing. I want to do a listening test for you, but I'm going to have to find it. So get your notepad out, or your phone, or something. We're going to listen to this with no visuals. And I would like you to write down what instruments and different parts you can hear.
You hear the buzzing.
60 cycle home.
Female vocal 1. Male vocal. So, with the female vocals, could you hear the difference in their voice? Their accent's a little bit different. And then towards the end, where they were both singing the same note, they were singing the same melody together, and then they both went different ways. You could hear the different voicing, so you could tell there were two female voices there. They were singing the exact same note, but you could hear there were two different female voices. And then when they split off, it really made it sound big. So it's the sort of thing that you need to achieve in your mix. When everyone's singing the melody, you can hear the different voices. So one thing I really like about the voices here is they're different. You've got different body, you've got different fullness, you've got different accents, you've got different ways of singing. And when you're singing the same thing, you can get it so that you can hear everyone. So the reason I did that was to show you the difference between not paying attention, as in having your eyes closed, and paying attention. So I'm pretty sure you would have actually heard more things because you could see them. So when you're looking at the drums, you could hear a bit more of what the drums were doing. So that brings me to my next point. So the way I make sure that everyone can be heard is look at each person. So I'll look around the stage, I'll look at each singer, can I hear them? Now, if you don't know who's singing what, that's where you use your headphones and your solo and listen to their channel so you can hear what they sound like by themselves and then hear what they're like in the mix. So can you hear them coming out? By looking at each person, that helps you to focus in on that person or that instrument. So if you know a drum fill's coming up, look at the drums. Did I hear what the drummer did through the PA? So when he went through the toms, could I hear the different toms? Or when he's playing the hi-hat, can I actually hear it? And yeah, so just the same across every instrument. It's a little bit different when you've got backing tracks because the backing tracks mask a whole bunch of stuff and make it a little bit more challenging. Next. Dun, dun, dun. So we've talked about how to get a little bit about how to get stuff out of front of house and what you're needing without getting too technical. Don't change it, Jesse. So, can you go to the next one for a sec, actually? Sorry. No, go back up. What do you have to have in your monitor mix in order to be doing what other people are doing?
Timing.
Depends where you are and timing. So, having some of the drums or the click track or a combination of both is important, depending on your role. So if your role is a bass player, then you probably need more drums so that you're able to go up and down with their rhythm and with their thing for the volume when you get louder. No, the other one.
Dynamic.
The dynamics, that's the one. So as the dynamics of the drums change, the bass player's dynamics are going to change. Or if the drummer's doing a certain accent on the kick drum, normally the bass player usually follows it. So then you need to have the kick drum with it, for example. Let's pretend that we don't have tracks. What instrument would be important for you? And I'm not just picking on the bass player, this is when I just talk about anyone. So whatever your so for an acoustic guitar, what do you need to have? Yes. What else?
Keyboard.
Okay, one person at a time. Click. Main vocal. What else? Keys. Drums. High fives. What else? Anything else? MD. Other guitar. So, what I would say is you need to have in your ears the things that you need to receive a cue from. So if you're receiving your cue from the lead vocals, you need to have them. If you're getting your cue from the keyboard, you need them. If you're getting it from another guitar, you need that. If you're getting cues from other singers, you need that. So depending on where you are, depends on what you need. Then there's the balance of having things that are in there that you should have, but they're distracting because sometimes that person makes mistakes and it throws you off. So that comes down to having that at a place where you can hear it enough to be led by it, but it's quiet enough that if they do mistakes, it's not putting you off. Same with vocals. Now, if we're going to be doing 4-part harmonies, so 2 males, 2 females, 1 high, 1 low for both, 4 parts. What needs to be heard? Melody, for starters. Now when you sing, you can hear yourself to a certain extent in your head, through your headness. Jawbone, thigh bone, whatever. So you don't necessarily need as much of yourself. But you do need to have some of yourself, because if you don't have any of yourself, if it's not loud enough, you can be thinking you're singing the right note, but be half a semitone off. And just like when you listen to, who's listened to the radio in their car quietly, been singing along in their head, turn it up and find it's in a different key. You know, it's really easy to do when you're just at the edge of being able to properly understand what's going on. So it's the same thing on stage. So when it comes to the fallback up the front, you need to have the lead instrument that is going to be giving you the melody. So that might be the acoustic or the piano or both. Then you need the reasonably even balance of everyone else. So the 4 vocals, within reason, should be the same. And then as you take different parts, so the worship leader's singing leading, so they're going to end up a little bit louder. And as you're doing different harmonies, when you're quieter, you're going to be a little bit back in the mix. And if you're being asked to push yourself, if you're being asked to push the harmony or the melody, then you're going to be louder because you're singing louder. So there's a certain amount of active volume change from you singing that's going to adjust what's happening in the fallback. Am I losing anyone yet? Excellent. So basically what I'm saying is you need a good mix of almost everything, but not everything unless you can do your own mix. Everything you're allowed. Yes, everything you get a cue from. So next, Jesse. Who wants to know what the buttons and dials do in a mixer? Next. Welcome to the Behringer X32 digital console. It has 32 inputs, 16 outputs. It has a built-in compressor and gate on every channel. It has a 4-band parametric EQ on every channel. It has 16 bus sends. Just to get the bus for $2. It has got 4 banks of a bunch, 12 faders times 4 banks, which is, if I got my Aussie haka, pew. So this here changes these, and we have got a digital LCD display with the names of those channels, which changes when you change banks. And they change colours. So we've got them set up in different colours, which are associated with these, which are the subgroups. Lost anyone yet? No. Over here we've got the assignable effects. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff. So there's lots of stuff that it does. Go to the next one, Jesse. That's the back. So there's your 32 inputs and your 16 outputs and your left and right out and your control room. And you've got USB out there, which will do 32 channels of discrete recording to a laptop, so you can send the 32 channels out to record. You can then bring those 32 channels back into the desk to do a... And my brain's not working today.
Your brain's not working today.
Yeah. To do a offline mix thing. Sound check. You can connect it to the network so that you can then connect your iOS devices and Androids and laptops so that you can remotely control different things, which gives you the ability of doing your own monitoring. It has got MIDI, so we can control the keyboard and guitar effects and other things if we wanted to. And it has AES 50, which is an audio transport which sends 48 channels out and 48 channels in. And that is what's used for connecting to a similar box at the stage to give you a digital snake instead of an analog snake, which is what we have. And you've got a bunch of auxiliary inputs and outputs which are down here. So, next. So, this is the main guts of each channel. So, on an old analog desk, you had a row for each channel, and then you'd have anything between 4 and 20 dials. So what they've done here is everything is software based. So instead of having 40 rows of all these things, they've got one that associates with each channel. So when you select each channel, you have the capability of making these adjustments. So we've got the gain control. We have got a high pass filter, which means you will let the frequencies above what you set it at through. So we use that to take the bass, unwanted bass out of microphones. So for example, under 100 hertz, you generally don't have anything. So we set that to take that what's not there away. We have got a gate. So for channels that are buzzing, that's like an automatic mute. So basically it turns the channel off when there's nothing coming through, and then when you start playing, it turns the channel back on. And you can adjust that based on how loud the person has to play before you let it come back on. And you also have a compressor. So that's to squash the frequencies a little bit, which you can use in a number of different ways, which we won't really get into right now. Then we've got your different frequencies. So you've got your low frequency, low mid, high mid, and high frequency. Now the actual frequency itself is set by this here. And then you've basically got a curve. So you've got a bell curve, and then you can adjust how wide that curve is for how much it's going to take out. Yeah, we're going to have 3 minutes to do practical stuff. So basically you can set 4 different EQ settings. And then on this side we have got the bus sends, which is your foldbacks. So number 1 is the front foldback, number 2 is the electric guitar, 3 is the keyboard, 4 is acoustic,
Drums.
2's guitar, 3's keyboard, 4's drums, 5 is
Acoustic.
6 is Dean. Is Dean special. And so basically 1 to 4 is with that one. And when you click that button, these become 5, 6, 7, 8. And you've also got your stereo bus, so that's sending it to front of house. And you have got a pan. I don't use that, so that's for something. And you've got a little USB, so that you can plug a USB stick in and record the front of house, 2-channel to USB. Next. I know I'm rushing over a lot of it, but it's just to give you a quick overview. No, down, Jesse. Not up. The other down. Just push the down arrow. Keep going. One more. Okay. Then we've got this menu which has a whole bunch of different things down here, and it also has a whole bunch of different things along here, and you use these to adjust what they do. Next. That's not important for when you're just doing the faders. Then we've got our faders. So they're in banks of 12. So, and then you push this to go to the next ones. It's 32 channels in, and then the fourth one is your auxiliary inputs and your effects returns. Then you have your subgroups, which on that one it's the subgroups. On this one it's your bus outputs, so that's your monitor sends. Do you guys need to go? Very loud. If you need to go. I mean, it just means you...
don't have to go
and then you've got front of house volume, master volume. Next. We talked about that. Next. Yeah, that'll do. Right, let's get physical. Come down the back.
Here we go.
Right, so now I can do an offline mix. So he's obviously not playing kick at the moment. That's the spill from the snare into the kick drum mic. Alright, so you're slowly adding things into the mix. With the subgroups, we've got it mixed up into different instruments. So the drums, instruments, vocals, and the tracks. Alright, so you can decide, okay, let's call it, so those vocals are from the track. So I might go, I want more vocals. And then I want more energy. So if I have the same mix, so everything's as even as it was, but I've now turned it down, is this going to inspire you to sing very loud? It's hard, eh? It's like, okay, I'm talking a little bit louder than I normally do, and I think I'm talking too loud. But here, talking at that volume, I can talk louder. I don't think I'm talking too loud. So the same sort of thing with singing. Yeah?
Okay. Yeah, you just like
So, what we are starting with here is we're starting with them at 0. Now, did anyone notice this light coming on?
Yes.
Okay, so this is a compressor. So that's something that's squashing the sound over the main output. Right? Now, that's basically a safety backup to not overload the system. Now, if you're sending too much to it, it's going to be squashing it, and then you're not necessarily going to be able to get the right amount of volume out of the system because it's turning itself down. So let's start with this at 0, these at 0, and then slowly add things one at a time. Okay? So what we've got here is we've got the drums.
Okay.
Then we've got bass, acoustic, electric, I'm not sure if both of those are being used. I don't know if both of those are being used. So you just have to look at the faders as to what you're getting.
Okay, yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So start with those.
Okay.
Then we'll add some track. And then we'll add some vocals. Okay? So we'll do the same song. Yep.
Yeah.
Now, if there's not much coming into the channel,
Yes.
it's not necessarily being used. So he's playing on. Okay, now that's coming in.
Yeah.
Right. Now notice that the snare's now gone really thin sounding from the interaction with that. That's alright, so keep going the other instruments. Okay, is the snare a bit loud?
Yeah.
About halfway between there and where it was. Okay, now let's go to the next one, next tab. Okay, put some vocals in. Starting at 2.
Pushing back the darkness, lighting up the kingdom that cannot be shaken. In the name of Jesus, enemies defeated, and we will shout it out, shout it out. Pushing back the darkness, lighting up the kingdom that cannot be shaken. In the name of Jesus, and we will shout it out, shout it out.
Okay, let's go back to the first one. Okay, bring this up. You want to put some piano on? Next one. Okay, now, just something to point out. Hey guys, now this isn't a criticism. It just pointed something out to me that I forgot to share. Okay. My rule of thumb is, just because you can hear it, doesn't mean it's too loud. So you notice you started to get some clarity in the piano?
Yeah.
And then you pulled it out. And also with the vocals, you started to get some clarity and then it's like, you pulled them out. Okay, now it's not a criticism, so we'll just go back a little bit and I'll just give you another quick example. So this isn't going to be a perfect mix, this is just a very quick critique and a couple of changes.
Pushing back the darkness, lighting up the kingdom.
Okay, so who's singing? These guys?
In the name of Jesus, enemies defeated, and we will shout it out, shout it out. God is fighting for us, pushing back the darkness, lighting up the kingdom.
So that's all your stage bleed. Okay, so that's actually not doing anything, that's just stage bleed from the mic that's sitting there. Alright?
Lighting up the kingdom that cannot be shaken. In the name of Jesus, enemies defeated, and we will shout it out. shout it out. God is fighting for us, pushing back the dark, lighting up the flame that cannot be shaken. In the name of Jesus, enemies defeated. We will shout it out. Shout it out. God is fighting for us, pushing back the darkness, lighting up the kingdom that cannot be shaken. In the name of Jesus, enemies defeated. We will shout it out.
Now you can hear each vocal.
Shout it out. God is fighting for us, pushing back the darkness, lighting up the kingdom that cannot be shaken. In the name of Jesus.
We're getting to the point where we're chasing ourselves and overloading it. So we're now just getting louder and louder and louder. So the other thing that you've got to be careful of is when you're adding things, you might then need to turn the group down, or you need to turn other things down. Okay? So, next. So, don't have it as loud as it was towards the end. So maybe start with the tracks. Let's start with the tracks and just put that at a certain volume and then mix to them. Okay, what's wrong? Okay, first thing. If you're going to unmute something, turn it down. Especially when it's front of house. Okay, so have that down. All right. Okay, so now balance everything around that. Now, just while it's playing, think about what's being played. So at the beginning, you've got the drums that's on the kick, snare, kick and snare. Yep. That's all they're doing. Right? And then what do they add on? They add the hi-hat. Do they add the toms?
Bass. Little bit of fill in there every now and then, but
not really.
And bass.
Okay, then the bass and the guitars come in. So have a look. So have a look in here, and then imagine, can I hear it? And does it feel like there's enough of it, or too much? Okay, so this time look at each one. Don't necessarily make adjustments. Just consider: is that the right volume? Okay.
In the name of Jesus, enemies defeated.
16.
Shout it out. God is fighting for us, pushing back the darkness, lighting up the kingdom that cannot be shaken. In the name of Jesus, enemies defeated. We will shout it out. I will not die. The resurrection power of Christ, alive in me.
Don't do that. Turn it up.
What?
Naughty. You pushed it up first. Choice. Now, sorry, I didn't do introductions earlier. Alex, our new C-Lab recruit.
Yeah.
So Alex has just finished a year up in Auckland doing C-Lab. 1 year or 2 years?
What?
1 year or two?
Oh, just 1 year.
1 year. And you're from Denmark?
Yep.
Yeah.
So come, your turn.
Oh, that's my mix, okay.
Until the end.
Take that as a yes.
That's all right.
His shoulder.
Alright.
Yes. Did you notice there was a bit more energy in that?
Yeah.
So it was a bit more drive. I mean, it was a little bit louder, but that's not the point. But there was also more energy in the mix. Oh, sorry. Hit spacebar.
I think it helps if you really know the song as well. So I know what should be driving and what shouldn't be. And yeah. Okay. Bye. See ya! Pushing back the darkness, lighting up the kingdom that cannot be shaken. In the name of Jesus, enemies defeated, and we will shout it out, shout it out. God is fighting for us, pushing back the darkness, lighting up the kingdom that cannot be shaken. In the name of Jesus, enemies defeated. Shout it out, shout it out, shout it out, pushing Lord, and cannot be saved. In the name of Jesus, enemies defeated, and we will shout it out, shout it out. God is fighting for us, pushing back the darkness, lighting up the kingdom, and cannot be shout it out, shout it out. Worship from the shadow, praise my church. Welcome, 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 welcome.
And then he echoed into the void.
Cool. So this is just the MD mic.
Visualize the stage.
And that's the stage monitor, that's the stage sound. So if you're standing in the middle, that's what you heard.
Is that pretty much a reason you have in-ears so that it's like clearer to hear what you want to hear, as well as being able to mix your own sound?
Yeah. So MD's not doing much.
There's
Now
the
it's
sound.
just keys.
There's the DI sound.
Jesus, you're the center. Everything revolves around you. Jesus, and nothing else matters. Nothing in this world. Jesus, you're the center, and everything revolves around you. Jesus,
Did you do that on purpose?
Makes it difficult, eh? When you got the stage on as well.
everything I give to you.
It's quite hard not being able to see the vocals.
Withholding nothing. That's in this one. I surrender all.
Like working out which
As in
channel,
seeing the
by
person
seeing the
singing.
people
Yeah.
to work out which channel was doing which part.
Yeah. So if we just do this.
Withholding nothing, withholding nothing, withholding nothing, withholding nothing, withholding nothing. I surrender all to you. Everything I give, everything I give to you.
So what you can do
Withholding nothing,
is, for the sake of it, if we do that there,
withholding
that
nothing,
there,
withholding nothing, withholding nothing, withholding nothing.
okay, so now this one's all the way over there, this one's all the way over there, that's a little bit over there, that's a little bit over
As
there.
we surrender, withholding nothing, as we surrender, withholding nothing, withholding nothing from my heart to the end. Jesus be the center, all around you. Yes, it's all from my heart to the
So that gate's a bit.
And Jesus be the center of your joy. Every knee will bow, and every tongue shall confess you, Jesus.
That's just the phone.
So you can just turn that down.
So, if you were in the service, what do you reckon about this mix? Any more electric? A little more electric. So you might have a little bit more vocals, but
Well,
there's a lot more.
the vocals are muted. So.
Oh no, it's the full bass.
Yeah.
Cool. Well done.